Hey interwebs, this is JackitK, and I'm sure out of all things I've brought to life and put down, this was not one of the things you thought would be coming back. But hey, it just worked out and I'm gonna roll with it. Essentially, I've been having itching to talk about Pokemon Go once more, once I've gotten more into it, been taking it a lot more hardcore than I believe I did when I last did audio video talking about the game. And with the way I think projects are going to be lining up, and the way I've noticed I've had my recording sessions in the past, I've been thinking it would be a good idea to do something, anything to just keep me talking on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, just so I don't lose how to socialize in a one-way environment, as weird of a thing as that would be to practice. But assuming you're not just already following me and noticed that I posted this and got curious, unfortunately for you, and you actually did stumble upon this search specifically about Pokemon Go, hearing me ramble about why I'm doing this is not why you're listening to this. You're listening to this for Pokemon Go related stuff, and for that I can deliver. While I'm still experimenting with exactly how the format wants to go, the reason I'm doing and uploading this is because I want to talk about Pokemon Go. I do have a specific set of goals in mind when making this series. Because I have experience in hardcore and casual environments, I kind of want to do something that bridges the gap between the two. So while I'll still go over the current events going on in the game, I may leave out some of the specific things that other people that I listen to cover. I'm just going to say here right now that unless there's really good reason to otherwise, and even that definition is speculative and tentative, I will not be covering data leaks on here. Granted, I don't mind people doing that because unlike a lot of stuff, leaks are unfortunately super reliable in Pokemon Go. Like, more times than not, when something leaks, it's official and it's more of a matter of when rather than if. However, I want to respect any possible wishes out there of people just wanting... Actually, how do I word it? My first thought is to say legit news, but that would put me on a higher pedestal than I definitely deserve. But I know in other genres beyond Pokemon Go, people are more salty when it comes to leaks, and I want to respect those wishes. But there's also the whole thing of part of appealing to a more casual audience, involves me trying to not exactly leave out all the technical stuff, but only bring it up when appropriate, I guess would be the best way to describe it. If it's leaked, it'll be news eventually, so why not wait? With that all said, as part of my goal of trying to do a commentary style for podcasting that bridges the gap between hardcore and casual, I may also go over some more basic elements of Pokemon Go just to make sure we're all on the same page. I'll be slowly, gradually introducing more and more stuff as the series goes on, just so if people are watching from the beginning, they'll slowly but surely be up to snuff, and I can start throwing around more technical terms. Eventually we're going to go into what an IV is and why it may or may not be relevant, but that won't be today. You'll see what I mean when we go into it, hopefully. So instead of spending another 3 minutes talking about what I want to do, how about I just do it? Found a way to procrastinate anyways. So I got some notes here going over the basic news going on. First and foremost, those of you who are playing Pokemon Go may be noticing more rock types, and when I say rock types, I mean fossil Pokemon. That is all part of Adventure Week, which has been going on for the past week and a half or so. I didn't write down the exact date it started, because I don't really care. The important thing at this point is that it ends Tuesday. So if you haven't got your Almastar and Kabutops, the evolved forms of some of the fossil Pokemon, and just the fossil Pokemon entries for your decks in general, Get out there and start catching. That also goes for some of the other bonuses worth noting with the game, like extra EXP for spinning new stops. Something that I personally really need to get more into and take advantage of, but that's a story for a little later. Oh yeah, and the special field research to help you catch the Pokemon from fossils, and that super sweet research that's out there where if you walk enough to hatch 2 of your eggs, you get a rare candy. That quest will be going away on Tuesday as well. Essentially any sort of quest that has Adventure Week on the start of its description, all that's going bye-bye with the event. Granted, if it works like most events have up to this point, then you have a little bit of leeway. It's not a midnight cutoff. It's never been. I don't quite recall the exact date off the top of my head, but if I remember right for my time zone, which is US Eastern, that would be about 4 p.m. You may want to double check that online though. A simple Google search on Adventure Week should suffice, if you really need to know. And as for my thoughts on Adventure Week so far, I've been really enjoying the event. I know that a lot of people have been speculating that it would be more focused on rock types in general, rather than the fossil Pokemon, Geodudes, and Nopass. Let's be real though, guys. It would be too broken if we had an event that increased the spawn of Larvatars when it's coming up as a Community Day Pokemon. If you really want the candies that bad though, this is a good time to make it your buddy. Because I forgot another one of the bonuses that have come out of Adventure Week is that the distance you need to walk a Pokemon friend in order to get a candy from them has significantly decreased. Since I brought him up, let's use our good old friend Larvitar as an example. Normally, it's a Pokemon you have to walk 5 kilometers in order to get 1 candy from. However, during the special window of Adventure Week, you only have to walk 1.5. It might even be 1.25. Give me 1 second. I conveniently have the app open up and I could probably double check that. Except I forgot that I made my buddy a Weedle, because I have a quest that involves walking Pokemon and getting buddy candy. And since Weedle is a Pokemon you normally need to walk 1 kilometer to get 1 candy, he's down to 1/4 of a kilometer. I think that equates to 1.25 for a 5 kilometer Pokemon. Maybe I'll add that in editing. So point being, if you don't have Pokemon in particular that you need to walk in order to get candies to evolve them for your Pokedex, now's a great time to walk some of your more rare and powerful Pokemon to get extra candies to power them up. Or if you're thinking ahead like I am, to get as many candies as you want for a certain upcoming Community Day, which I didn't even have my notes, and now I think I'm going to have to talk about because I've been hinting at it so much. Oh boy, thanks for procrastinating and extending a podcast that I wanted to be short in the first place. So yeah, I actually spent a bit of time walking my Gardevoir because I really like my Gardevoir personally. I'm still trying to get a fairy move on his charge move. Unfortunately, that process has been just eating up any TMs that I possibly pick up from the raids I do. I have not been lucky enough to find any field research that nets me a TM. So I thankfully have the luxury of being able to do a raid to get that, but point being, it doesn't have the move I want, and to get back to the actual point, I really like this Gardevoir, and the reason that is because it has the best potential out of any Gardevoir you could possibly get in the game, And with it being the most significant fairy type so far, I really want to power it up all the way and actually use it as a fairy type in battles. Unfortunately, that requires getting a fairy move on it, which I've gone into why that's been a mess. But point being, the general consensus in the hardcore community is put your Larvatars as your buddy and walk as much as you can. But I personally find other things that I want to walk as well, and honestly, as long as it's a Pokemon that you really need to get the candies for, there's no wrong way to walk your buddy at this point. And maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, because 1 kilometer Pokemon, you can just walk at any time and get your candies relatively easily. It's those Pokemon that normally take 3 kilometers and 5 kilometers that you really want to take advantage of this for. And I guess if you don't got anything else you really need to walk, it might be a good time to walk a legendary, but I personally would rather stick towards the 3 or 5 kilometer Pokemon. Especially if you're looking for dex entries or just candies to power up your Pokemon in general. Now, the reason besides Tyranitar, Larvitar's evolved form being really good for battle, that you may want to specifically focus on getting as much candy for it as possible, is because the upcoming Community Day for June is going to be Larvitar. And if the speculation that's been going around the community ends up being accurate, it's going to get a move that makes it so good. This already powerful Pokemon is just going to skyrocket up in usability. Unfortunately, since I'm trying to constrain myself from going into things that haven't been officially confirmed, I'm going to have to wait to talk about exactly what makes Tyranitar so good. But trust me, it's really promising stuff. Now, the Community Day itself is going to be June 16th, which is going to be less than 2 weeks away from the time this actually gets uploaded. And as we know from past Community Days, whenever they make a new Pokemon increase in spawns specifically for Community Day, they usually have some special attachments to it. For example, the previous Community Day was of Charmander, and not only were the spawns increased, but if you fully evolve a Charmander into a Charizard during the time frame of the Community Day event, it got the special move Blast Burn. So the reason you would want to stock up on Tyranitar candies in advance is solely because of all the speculation of how the special move is going to get when it fully evolves during the Community Day window is just that darn good. This would be one Community Day where, if you haven't been doing it already, find a good Larvitar and do not evolve it. Granted, with how rare it is, I understand that's not easy to do. It's definitely easier said than done. But if you just so happen to have a Larvitar sitting around that looks really good and you want to use for battle, refrain yourself. It will be worth it. Especially if the speculation comes to fruition. And even if it doesn't, it is going to get some special move. And unless it's something really dumb like Surf as a charge move or something like that, as long as it's a battle-worthy move, it will be worth holding on to. I personally have like a 91% let me correct myself. I have a Larvitar with good potential that the only reason I didn't evolve was because I had 2 Larvitars with good potential. I think one had better overall potential than the other one, but I decided to go with the one that had perfect attack. So we fully evolved that. I was just building up candies for the other one when this Community Day event went down, when we got the news and the speculation that came afterwards. So by pure luck, I have a Larvitar ready to go. It's just a matter of getting the candies for it. If I can get a head start on that, all the better, because you're going to want as much candy as you can get from this community day event to evolve as many Larvatars as possible. Assuming you have a good community day grind. I know not everyone does, but if you do and can only get out for a community day either this month or the next month, I would definitely recommend going out this month. And if you don't, just turn on your phone, maybe go out for a walk in the time frame. Even if you get a couple Larvatars, that would still justify getting out for a community day, because it is a good Pokemon. And if the pattern of past community days holds true, which I am willing to bet will, there's no reason it won't, you'll have a chance at a shiny Larvitar, and that alone will make it worthwhile. If for some reason you can't make it out though, never fear. Every community day, while the spawns for a shiny may be increased during the event of the initial release of a shiny Pokemon, in and out of community day, just like when Poochyena was first introduced as a shiny, during the dog event we had a while back, I believe the odds were increased of getting it as a shiny, but you can still stumble upon it in the wild as a shiny today, and that holds true of community Pokemon as well. A little off tangent, but point being, this is the community day you want to be out for. And between that and Adventure Week, this is a good time to try to find a new park. Just try to find new places that may give you more spots to spin and spawns in general that you may not have been aware of in the past. And I bring this up because I hope to talk a little bit later on about Pokemon nests. I do hope to bring at least one general topic of advice once an episode, and this week I think I'm going to talk about Pokemon nests, just because they're a really great resource for filling out your decks, finding that elusive shiny, or just getting more candies to power up your Pokemon in general. And I feel like it's a way to get these things that is a bit more accessible than some of the more other hardcore things like raids or IV hunting. My point being is I just feel that out of all the really useful things to know about the game, this is a good place to start. Now with that, maybe I can get on to some other topics I have written down and had in mind to share. I've done a bit of nest searching myself. Yesterday along my way home from work, I decided to take a little extra time to drive by any parks that I may have normally passed by, trying to get the most efficient route back home, to see if there was anything worthwhile that I've been overlooking all this time. Especially just general Poké spots that I haven't spin. I really want to find one good area with a ton of spots to spin, just so I can pop a lucky egg to double the experience I get, and make a big push towards hitting that max level before they inevitably increase the cap. It wasn't something I normally cared about. It was something that was just like, why would I want to rush to get to that point? Because once I hit it, there isn't going to be anything to do with my EXP. There's not going to be any reason to use any further lucky eggs. Because I know some people just try to grind as much experience as possible, and if that's the way you play, that's good for you. I just don't think it's my style. However, with the level cap being increased, I just realized it would be nice to see what it felt like to be the max level in the game. Even in the raid groups that I am a part in locally. It's a bit of a status quo. It's like a big, you did it. Congratulations. That floats around in the community. It's always a big deal when someone hits level 40, the max level currently in the game, is the point I'm saying. And it would be nice to just see what that feels like. Especially since they're going to just increase the level eventually. I'll get to enjoy it for a little bit, but not be permanently blocked out of never having a use for experience ever again. I got a little off tangent though. I do got one idea that may be able to allow me to get that sweet, sweet EXP that I'm all of a sudden craving. But it's just a matter of if I'm going to have the time to execute that plan before Adventure Week ends. We'll see. Guess I've really been interested in doing this because of all the stories I've been hearing online of people getting an insane amount of experience by just spitting news stops. A pretty funny story out there is, I believe a player in Germany, they started a new account and were able to get from level 1 all the way to level 40 in less than a week. I believe it was within 4 days. Something insane like that. And they weren't even focusing on catching. The only thing they even bothered to keep was their starter Pokemon. They didn't even bother to keep any items that didn't help them with the EXP grind. From what I understand, they basically just drove around, hitting every new stop under a lucky egg, raking in a whole ton of experience in the process. I really want even a tiny sliver of a taste of that after hearing that sort of story. It's been nice to get all of the new Pokemon out there. I've gotten way more Aerodactyls than I even know what to do with, thanks to the field research out there. For those of you who don't know, if you get a research task that specifically mentions Evolve in Kabuto or Omamite, hang on to that, especially if you don't have an Aerodactyl, because that will always net you an Aerodactyl, and with how plentiful Kabuto and Omamite are, getting enough candies to evolve one shouldn't be any problem, even if you're saving your peanut berries for the upcoming community day. With all that, let me get into the next topic, because there's more I could talk about, but this is supposed to be a half-hour podcast, and I'm only just getting off the first topic now. It is June, by the way, and with a new month comes a new set of research tasks. Out goes Zapdos and the electric type challenges that came along with it, and in comes Articuno and water types. I know. Ice is a form of water. I guess it's also true that water is a form of ice. But that still seems odd to me. I know exactly why they did it, but would it have really been that bad to just give us ice types for a month? I know not everyone has access to a water biome, but I feel like even less people have access to ice types, and there's enough common ice types out there that you can make a system with rewards revolving around ice types that doesn't completely break the game. I promise, Niantic. You can hand us ice types without breaking the game. But we got what we got. Well, for the quests themselves, for this month I don't have too much experience. I did get one though, where when I powered up a Pokemon 3 times, I got an encounter with a Staryu. Someone did either found or made a list of their research tasks on Discord that I follow on that. So I think I can at least read off some of those. For 3 curveballs in a row, you can get an encounter with a Golduck. Evolving a water type Pokemon can net you a Seal. Making a nice throw can get you a Slowpoke. Powering up a Pokemon 3 times for a Staryu. Make an excellent throw for a chance at Absol. This is a big one because Absol was originally a Pokemon that you could only get in raids, and it was a level 4 raid boss, so impossible to solo. And while I feel like it required the least amount of people that you normally would need for a level 4, high level players could probably 2-man it, but 3 to 5 is a more realistic expectation. Point being, this month is a good chance to actually get that Absol if you haven't had the opportunity to raid. Just keep in mind, if you come across a quest that has make one excellent throw for a random encounter, quote unquote, hold on to that quest because that will get you an exclusive Pokemon. And for the rest of the Pokemon on this list, battling in a gym apparently gets you a Horsey. Earn a candy with your buddy for a Krabby. And I'm surprised this one's on here, but it's probably one of those cases where, let me just read it off. Catch 5 Pokemon with Water Boosts for Vulpix. Granted, this one's probably a case where it actually is randomized between 3 or so different Pokemon, and Vulpix just happens to be one of them. But I can confirm that the power up a Pokemon 3 times will net you a Staryu. And I have heard things about Absol now that I think more about it, so I'm certain those two are correct. And I have pretty good confidence in the other ones. And with that, of course, there's the new research breakthrough. And if you can tell from my confusion of why it wasn't ice types instead of water types, the research Pokemon that you get from clearing your 7 daily research is Articuno, and man, am I hype about this. It's kind of a funny story. The legendary birds came out right when I was starting to get into raiding and finding my raid group and just getting into that grove. It's kind of the point where I went from casual to hardcore. And with that, I didn't get every single legendary bird. I did Articuno and Moltres raids, but unfortunately not enough to actually get them. The only one of the 3 that I got was actually Zapdos, so you can imagine my disappointment from going from Moltres to Zapdos, but it's finally time for the month of Articuno. And I actually planned out, but not really planned, but it worked out perfectly, that my 7th research breakthrough was right on the first day of June. So while I accidentally claimed the field research early, I was able to hold on to the box until the proper time of 4 p.m. Eastern, where we swapped over from Zapdos to Articuno officially to redeem the research breakthrough, and with that, I got my first Articuno. My Kanto Pokedex is officially complete, minus 2 regionals, I believe, is all that's holding me back, but I'm pretty sure everyone in the US is at the same point of this. So until I just randomly make a trip out to Europe and Australia, or we get a special event that temporarily allows these regionals to come to the US, my Kanto Dex is as good as done, and boy does that feel good to say. For you guys at home that still need your Articuno, there's no need to fear. The month has only started, so you have plenty of time to get your own Articuno. Just be sure to fill out those quest research when you're out, and if you're the type of person who can't do a field research every day, I have some advice for you to help make that a little bit easier so you too can get Articuno, even if you only go out and play the game once a week. Let's see, 3, 6, yeah, I think if you time it out perfectly, you can actually get an Articuno with 1 week. What you gotta do though is you have to complete 3 field research and just hold on to them. Get them to the point where they're ready to be redeemed, but don't redeem them. Instead, wait until the following day. Once you're at a new day, you can hit redeem and it'll count as a new stamp. Do that for the following day, and that should get you 3 stamps for your research breakthrough, even though you were only able to get out 1 day. If you can do that once a week, you should be able to get the research breakthrough Pokemon regardless of the month. And obviously, if you're able to do that more and get more than 7 research stamps in a single month, you can get multiple chances at the Pokemon, which will get you more candies to power it up and more opportunities to get the best potential of a legendary Pokemon to pick to power up. Something that I am hoping to take advantage of so I can have the best ice type possible. I know way back when there was so many raids where ice Pokemon was your best option, I really missed having an ice type legendary and just being forced to make the most out of my Piloswines and Cloisters and Jinx. It'll be nice to actually have a nice legendary type. Worst case scenario, I already have one. But the month is still really young, so I have a lot of good thoughts about how this month is going to be in getting the best Articuno I possibly can. By the way, for you guys who don't know, I want to make sure that it's clear that 1, it can never run away, and 2, as long as you're willing to not redeem any more field research until you catch the Articuno, you can always run away from it, come back at a later time, and resume trying to catch it. These 2 details are very important because you should always try to catch your Articuno or research breakthrough Pokemon in general with a Pinap Berry. I know that sounds ridiculous, but trust me, it'll be worth it. Legendary Pokemon are usually really rare unless you have a good raid community, and I know not everyone out there does. Even if you do have a good raid community, it's a good opportunity to get some candies because, man, these legendary Pokemon eat up a lot of candy and Stardust. And if your only option to get these legendary Pokemon are through the research breakthrough, you're going to need as much candy as you can get. Because Pokemon through field research start out at a lower level than those you can get from raids. So that translates into needing more candy and Stardust to get up to the same fighting level as a Pokemon you would catch out of a raid. Especially if you're fighting it during a weather type that matches up with the Pokemon. All those details are for another time though. Point being, it's worth your time to pin up your legendaries. You can't miss out on them, and it'll only help you out in the long run. And speaking of going out there and catching your Pokemon, if you've been looking for a good Executor, now is a pretty good time to do so. A week or so ago, we got an announcement that Alolan Pokemon are coming to the game. Eventually. And today we finally got news on that because there was some news that came out in regards to future Pokemon games for consoles, specifically consoles outside of Pokemon Go, the Nintendo Switch. But that's news I hope to go into a little bit later. Point being, in celebration of that news, the first Alolan Pokemon has been introduced to the game, and it's the long neck, long tree monstrosity that we all know and love, Alolan Executor. Or at least that's what I would say if I didn't just notice today that I haven't seen any Executors in a while. So maybe that event is null and void, but I'll continue to spiel on how I would like to have Executors just in case. It, with its big neck handsomeness, has been roaming around the world. Pretty much anywhere you go, if you walk long enough, you'll find yourself an Executor. Unless you're just flat out in a phone dead zone or something. Unless you're flat out in a Pokemon Go dead zone, trust me, I know what those are like. That's my house. Point being, as long as you're out catching Pokemon, you'll eventually come across one of them, and it's a good opportunity to stock up on candies. I have not looked too into exactly how well a lone Executor does in battle in comparison to Executor, but I do know Executor is a good grass type. Until the Bulbasaur Community Day came out, it was indefinitely... What's the word that always gets abused in my friends' circles? Objectively. Yeah, objectively. Objectively the best grass type Pokemon. Until Bulbasaur Community Day came out and we got Frenzy Play in the mix. I don't think it was quite enough to outshine Executor, which makes it even more important to have one. even if you can't get a good Alolan Executor, all those candies you'll be catching, I guess you'd be catching the candies if you're catching the Pokemon. Point being, every Alolan Executor you catch nets you 5 Execute candies, and that doesn't have to be used on a Alolan Executor. If you have a good Execute waiting to go, you can evolve that. If you already have a good Executor that's not Alolan, you can use those candies to power up that. Or you could power up a good Alolan Executor. Whatever you use it on, the candies will not be in vain. Grass Pokemon aren't always relevant for battling and raids and that, but when they are, it's good to have an Executor or 2 or 5. Point being, good time to get that candy grind on. Or at least that's what I would say if they weren't all gone already. That's what I get for actually trying to record a podcast. It becomes outdated before I even finish editing it. Right along with trying to take advantage of all the neat stuff that came out of Adventure Week. And I don't know, I feel like eventually they're gonna at least turn the dial back on Executors, so you'll want to get out there now while they're still plentiful. I'm not sure if they're going away forever or you'll still be able to come across them, but less commonly in the future. But I highly doubt that they're gonna keep constantly flooding us with long neck palm trees. Plus, it's just so fun to stick one of those long neck bully monsters into a gym and just see its long neck's glory do work and break stuff. With that though, I guess it's time to actually go into the news that pretty much brought this Pokemon that I'm clamoring about into the game. Just a couple days ago, we got news of a long rumored game coming for the Nintendo DS or Switch. Switching to the Switch. Why have I not got that to my brain yet? Let's go Eevee and let's go Pikachu. We don't know every detail about them yet. There was an interview that went along with the trailer that went with it. So we know a little bit more beyond the trailer. But I personally think that we need to see a bit more gameplay before jumping to too many conclusions. What we do know is that it's essentially going to be a remake of the Kanto region. Your starter is going to be either a Pikachu or an Eevee, depending on what you get. And instead of battling down the Pokemon to get them to increase their catch rate, it's going to act more like Pokemon Go, where you throw the ball at the screen and catch them, and your odds of catching them are going to be based off how well you threw the ball at it. I'm a little torn about this personally, because it's clear it's not going to work exactly like Pokemon Go, and I feel like the whole throw the ball at the Pokemon to catch it just works better with a touchscreen interface than it does with motion controls. Again, we have not seen any gameplay beyond the trailer, so I can't say for sure if that's the case. But I personally would rather use touchscreens for this particular action than motion controls. And I'm one who normally gives motion controls the benefit of the doubt. Was there any other important details? Oh yeah, there is going to be quote-unquote integration between Pokemon Go and these two games. And more importantly, for some groups of the community, this is not going to be the main game that we heard about all so long ago in interviews that specifically said that there was going to be a mainstream Pokemon RPG coming to Nintendo Switch. That game is coming in 2019, while Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee come at the rear end of 2018. So this is all good because we get this set of games essentially as a bridge between Pokemon Go players and hardcore, just the main game players in general, and the people who've been clamoring for essentially Gen 8 will still get their Gen 8 just a little bit later on. Now, if you can tell, I'm a little conflicted on my overall opinions of what we know about this Let's Go game so far. Wait, I almost forgot about the big deals. I was talking about the interconnectivity between Go and Let's Go, and I almost glanced over it. Essentially, you'll be able to send Kanto Pokemon ranging from Bulbasaur to Mew, into the new games. From what I understand is one-way transferability. You send them to a park, which you may or may not be able to take them from that park into your game, but you can't send them back to Pokemon Go. Instead, the connectivity from the main game to Pokemon Go is interesting. You're going to be able to transfer items into Pokemon Go, but there's talks about a brand new Pokemon being transferable from this game into Pokemon Go. I don't want to go on the speculative train too much because that's literally all we know, that it's going to be a special Pokemon. Most likely one that's actually not been introduced into the main games yet. But I feel like there's supposed to be items you can transfer to Go too, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe this special Pokemon is all you really get into your Pokemon Go game. Now for my reason of doubts. I am honestly excited about this game, but I am wondering if it's going to be the bridge from Pokemon Go to the main series games that people are clamoring over. I'm a little iffy on the character designs. The Pokemon are great. You can definitely tell it's HD. It's definitely more on the cartoony side, but still high definition. I'm not sure if the models work. I think more about it is actually more just like upgrading the sprites from Red and Blue into models rather than just improving the models that we got from X and Y and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I guess saying that it's semi more chibi than what we've been getting in the recent main games would be a good way to describe it. But I'm sure that art style won't matter when I'm actually playing the games. I am also a little speculative on certain elements, like their choice to limit it to the first generation of Pokemon. I was hoping if we were getting a revisited Kanto, that we would at least be able to use Kanto Pokemon that evolved into future generation Pokemon, but that's not looking to be the case. And it really limits our possibilities when it comes to transferring Pokemon from Go into this game if we're only going to allow the first 151. If you couldn't tell, I'm also a little skeptical of the ability to transfer. No, I talked about that. I'm trying to say the catching mechanic. One, I think it would have been really cool to actually introduce Pokemon Go players into some of the more advanced techniques of catching Pokemon that are in the main games. With how much talk about how this is going to be a bridge from Pokemon Go into the main series games, I thought more of a hybrid between Go and the main game's catching mechanics would be really amazing to see. But I'll wait until we see more gameplay of the actual catching. I'll talk about my opinions when we get more gameplay in general. The little bits we see in the battle seem pretty cool, and the whole concept of co-op is pretty amazing. This is going to be the first Pokemon game that we've actually got co-op in, that at least looks like it's going to have a semi-traditional battling system. Some of the other spin-offs we may have gotten may have had co-op. I'm kind of blanking on those details right now, but this is definitely going to be the first co-op Pokemon game of this type. And that little detail actually got me pretty excited, and I'm surprised not more people are talking about. It seems really OP because we end up having 2-on-1 battles with said co-op, but still a pretty cool touch. Overall, I do have some concerns, but we still have plenty of time to learn more about the game to justify those. I do see the potential of this being a fun little holdover onto the main games for some players, and a good way to get introduced into the main series Pokemon game for other players. One thing I do hope, though, is that it's not just a complete remake of the Kanto region. When I first started hearing the rumors that it was going to be a revisit of the Kanto region, I was hoping more like a 5-10 years in the future sort of deal. That way we could actually see a wider variety of Pokemon and not just be retreading the same ground of Kantos. We'd be visiting Kanto still, but with a twist. And unfortunately, from what I've seen, it just seems like that they're remaking Kanto from location to location. I even recognize Nugget Bridge from the trailer, just from the fact that there was a bridge with a bug catcher. And I think the bug catcher even had the same Pokemon that he did in one of the main games, either red, blue, yellow, fire red, or leaf green. I think he had that same exact Venonat, which has me a little concerned that we're just revisiting Kanto with a couple gameplay mechanics. Speaking of gameplay mechanics, there was one other thing about the trailer that I was excited about. They didn't just implement the catching system from Pokemon Go, but they appear to have implemented the encounter system as well. No longer are you just randomly walking through a cave and get bombarded by Zubats and off screen through random encounters that we're used to seeing in Pokemon games. In this one, it seems like you're going to be able to see the wild Pokemon on screen and encounter them directly to go catch them. Something that I feel like the series really could use, and it's pretty excited to see have happening. Yeah, I can see the concern of being able to run away from every battle if you can see every battle. But other games have done this sort of system, and I believe they have systems in place to keep you from running away from every single encounter. Like, from my experiences playing Persona 4 as an example, I remember not being able to run away from every single encounter I can. If I'm, careless and get too close to the enemy. Maybe I could avoid them if I was careful. But it's kind of similar to random encounters where if you have a high enough speed, you can pretty much run away from any sort of Pokemon fight. And all you really are doing is getting into some extra animations through a random encounter than if you were just avoiding it on the field. Then again, I'm kind of over speculating because if the game is going the direction I think it is, and you don't even fight any of the wild Pokemon, you solely just either catch them or don't, then it's not really gonna matter. If you can't even get hurt from a wild Pokemon, then why does it matter if you can easily avoid them or not? That's the mindset I'm going into this with, and it's why I think that this sort of system works perfectly for Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, even if it may not work out as easily in a main series game. I see it potentially working out if you implement it correctly, but it's definitely perfect for a game like this, at least from what we've seen. I'm glad they found a way to actually implement it into a Pokemon game. With that all the way though, that's all the news I want to talk about. Despite how long I talked about it, I probably could go on even more about that Let's Go game, but I'm gonna reserve the rest of that conversation until we see more about it. I got the feeling we'll find out more details at E3, because that's coming up in only a few weeks. And for those of you who don't know, E3 is essentially the biggest game. It is the biggest gaming convention of the year. It is essentially video game Super Bowl. All the major companies in the game design industry usually hold their big news nuggets specifically for E3. And while Nintendo the past couple of years haven't been directly involved with E3, and by that I mean they do go to E3, but they don't hold press conferences anymore for some reason, which is what you usually sit down and watch on Twitch or whatever your streaming service is. Instead, they do their own sort of stream outside of E3 and just go to the show to present gameplay to the press. They usually save some major news stories for the time period of E3 itself. Plus, people who actually get to the convention get first-hand experience with all these games, so even if we don't see a new trailer directly for this new Pokemon game. It'll inevitably be part of Nintendo's Treehouse presentation, where essentially the people localize the Pokemon, or localize Nintendo games in general, play the games for us. We actually see raw gameplay footage of the games that they talk about at E3, just for this presentation alone. That's not even including all the press that's going to be at E3 and trying the games out directly. It's going to be a good time for gaming, and if you Pokemon Go fans have piqued up your interest on other video games from the news of Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, this would be a good year to check out E3, because we're definitely going to get news of that there, and you may find news on some other video games you would normally overlook. With that out of the way though, we're almost at an hour and I haven't even gotten to, what do I want to call this segment? Just advice for newbies, something like that. That's basically the point I'm trying to go for with it though. Just some more general advice that hardcore players may already be familiar with, but something to help everyone get on the same page. The show is still plenty young, so we got plenty of time to work out those details. In the meantime, I like to talk about Pokemon nests a little bit more. First, let's go over what makes a nest. A Pokemon nest is a general term used for a large area where Pokemon spawn in. The way the game works, every Pokemon you see has a predetermined location. Like, if I walk to a spot and see a random Rattata, if another person walks to that same spot, they'll also see that Rattata. And with some exceptions, that Rattata will be the same for me as it is for that other person. Granted, like I said, there are exceptions. Like if you're under a certain level, the stats of that Pokemon will be randomized rather than be fixed. Or if you're using certain items, you may be able to find Pokemon in a spot that other people can't. But overall, if I find a Pokemon somewhere, anyone else who goes to that spot within the same time I do will see that Pokemon as well. To elaborate on that fact further, Niantic will pick various spots where they focus spawns on a certain Pokemon. I don't know if it's still true, but I believe in the olden days, this is where the Pokemon come from, and they just roam to other spots from there. And that is why it's called a nest. It's where the Pokemon are born, for lack of a better way to say it. If you go to a nest, you will find Pokemon in large numbers, or at least larger numbers than normal. And with the way Niantic lays out their nests, every couple weeks or so, they will rotate. One month, you may find a nest of Teddiursas, while in another month, it turns into a nest of Charmanders. So even if it's been a while since you last gone to a place that spawned a bunch of Pokemon of a certain type, it may be worth going back there, because if you do, you may find a different set of Pokemon, and it may be one that you've been looking for. Because nests have a large cluster of Pokemon, it's a good way to stock up on candies if you're looking for candies of a particular Pokemon. If you're lucky enough to have a nest of Pokemon that have the potential of being shiny, it could be a good way to hunt for that shiny Pokemon as well. And speaking of hunting for Pokemon, if you're looking for a Pokemon with high potential, the best potential you can possibly find, this is a good place to look for them too. I have a Totodile with perfect potential, and we found it, me and my group, found it at a Totodile nest. So if you're ever looking for as many Pokemon as possible, whether to increase your odds of finding something rare, or just to stock up on the candies for evolution or powering up, nests are a good place to go. Now if you're like me, way back when I first started the game, it may seem obvious on paper what a nest is, but when you're actually going out looking for them, you may overlook what's actually a nest the entire time. So I have a small checklist of things to look out for if you're trying to determine if a place is a nest or not. First and foremost, I highly recommend using the Silph Road Nest Atlas for all your nest hunting needs. It is community based, so you don't have to worry about any sort of seedy work. Anything reported there has been reported by a fellow member of the community who's physically gone to the stop and seeing the Pokemon there for themselves. I've personally used it a couple of times to find a few nests that I didn't realize existed in the past. When you actually go to the nest and you're trying to figure out what the Pokemon that nest spawns is, here's a couple things to look out for. 1, and I say a few things, but it basically can all be summed up in the following statement. Does something look unusual? Are you seeing more of a Pokemon that you normally don't find in large numbers? Like, odds are, if you see 2 Charmanders at your local park, there's a good chance that it's a Charmander nest. Does it seem peculiar that they are spawning so frequently? With the case of the Charmander nest, you see all these Charmanders, and the weather is actually cloudy, or just not sunny in general. Charmanders are fire types, so they're normally more common in the sunny clear weather. That's not a clear indicator on its own, but like if you see one Charmander outside of non-sunny weather, it's a lot safer to assume that it's a Charmander nest than if it was sunny. If the weather does match up, it should be easier to indicate if it is a nest or not, because that'll make even more of them spawn. Essentially, unless it's a really common Pokemon, if you see 5 of a particular species that's not your normal catching fodder, that's a pretty good indication that it is a nest Pokemon. And you should stick around, because even after you catch them all, the game will eventually put more of that specific Pokemon into the general area you just caught the other ones in. Events like the current Adventure Week is also a good way to help figure out what a nest is, because like with weather, if you're seeing Charmanders during Adventure Week where the game is supposed to just spawn Alnamites, Kabutos, and other fossil Pokemon, and you see that Charmander, that's going to make you go, why am I getting Charmanders? I wonder if that's the nest Pokemon. And that's basically what my advice summarizes to. Again, I highly recommend checking out the Silph Nest Atlas. And if you do find a nest Pokemon, be sure to use the Silph Nest Atlas to indicate that nest Pokemon you found and where that nest is at, so other players of the game that happen to be in the area can find that Pokemon too if they're looking for it. It's the only way that the Silph is actually useful, if people actually report the findings that they get at said nest. If that's not working out for you, and you do have Facebook, another good thing you can do is just go search your local area for raid group communities. Not only will that help you get set up with a group of people to do raids with, allowing you to get rare Pokemon, but you can also bounce off friends to see if anyone actually found particular Pokemon at a nest. My raid group actually just, whenever the nest Pokemon change, one of the first things that they do in the group is talk about the Pokemon that are currently popping up at the nest and what they changed to. So Facebook, Discord, whatever other communities you use for chat, those are good ways to find nest Pokemon as well. Facebook comes to mind first just because it's the most accessible out of all the chat medias, and with more accessibility means you're more likely to find people who actually have a group set up. But if you do find a good Discord community, that works too, or any of those other chat sites, like I'm gonna be just making up random names like Dibble Dabble or Talk, Open Face. Find anything like that with a good raid community, that'll work too. Now I'm gonna end things off here though. I've been rambling for about half an hour more than I thought I would. My voice is getting tired. There's other things that I'm supposed to be doing that I haven't gotten to yet, because this podcast has been taking longer than I thought to record, especially with the way I do it, because I just cut and redo things if I feel like it doesn't come out the way I want. So this hour-long podcast probably took more like an hour and a half to record or something like that. But I do hope you guys were able to enjoy it. If you listen through, feel free to leave some feedback. This is really in a primitive format currently, and I hope to do a lot more to actually streamline, and there's a lot of changes that I plan to make overall once I get my new recording setup fixed and things like that. If you're a newer player of the game, or just don't play it as frequently, or don't have your communities set up yet, I especially want to hear your feedback as well, because I'll admit, when you've been out of the casual side of the community, let me know if that's a fair term to use too. When you've been out of that side of the community for so long, it's kind of easy to forget what's too overwhelming of terminology in that. I try to use like potential and placement of IVs just to make that more clear, but I appreciate any sort of feedback I can get from your perspective especially. But if you have any feedback, regardless on how much you play the game, feel free to let me know. I'm not positive how much it's going to be used as I try to narrow down how I want to record it and how often I want to do so, but I'll be sure to make use of any advice that I can. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you all stick around for the next one. With how long this took, it'll probably be another month. But once I do figure out how consistently I want to do it, I do want to do this. I wouldn't say consistently, but on a set pattern. That's a good term. Take care, everyone.